Hi, and welcome to Safe in the Real World. I'm Ahmed Syed. Today I want to talk to you about the top 3 tips for building empowered and autonomous teams in a safe environment. Have you ever wondered how to practically empower and give more autonomy to the teams without everyone acting in their own self-interest and it turning into chaos? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. I mean, we want people to be enthusiastic and we want them to be proactive, but we also want it to be clear when they are stepping out of the agreed boundaries so that we have confidence to work within the parameters that have been set. So let's look at the 3 top tips for that. Tip number 1, fail successfully. Yes, you heard me right. You've heard of fail fast, of course, but how do we know when we want to fail? I don't know about you, but I don't want my pilot to be failing fast. I also don't want a surgeon to be failing fast. So we want a way of clarifying what acceptable failure is. And I want to introduce to you the concept of the waterline. It's an interesting concept that I've learned from Aaron Dignan in his book Brave New Work, which I also, by the way, highly recommend. So the idea is that we're all in a ship, we're all in a boat, and we're all learning and we're growing, we're experimenting. And if we are to drill a hole above the waterline, then people still feel confident and able and empowered to be able to do that, because the downside is very little, because it is above the waterline. However, if I'm making an experiment which is below the waterline, it's got the possibility of sinking the ship. So we've got to be really careful when that happens, and that's where we should draw the line for autonomy. So we need to be clear on what that line actually is in our environment and making it really clear what is the parameters for failing and how we can fail successfully in our environment. Tip number 2 is about simplifying your policies. Now, what I'd like to do is to give you an example from traffic. When we look at how we traverse a crossroads, there are 2 ways in which we may do that. The first is via a roundabout, and the second is where we have a traffic signal that is across an intersection. So let's have a look at the 2 different options that we have. When we have a roundabout, we've got more people have more autonomy. They are able to make decisions as to when they can move around, and they have some very simple policies, right? So we want to flow in the direction of the traffic, and we also want to make sure that people that are on the roundabout, they have the right of way. Now contrast this with the command and control, if you like, signal stopping over here. We tell people when to go and we tell them when to stop. Now you would have thought that when that's the case, you would have had a safer a cross-section would be safer than a roundabout, but studies actually show from the US that signal crossings that have been switched over to roundabouts have a 90% reduction in fatal collisions and a 40% reduction in pedestrian collisions as well. Not only that, because a roundabout promotes a continuous flow rather than stop and start, there's an 89% reduction in the delays to traffic and 56% reduction in vehicle stops. So it's not just safer, it also reduces the delay as well. Now in terms of cost, let's have a quick look at that. Costs are roughly about the same for both of these options, but it costs between $5,000 and $15,000 per year $5,000 and $10,000 per year. This is a US study to maintain a traffic system, whereas a roundabout obviously doesn't have any power or anything like that. And also, if there's a power outage, then you might need to man up that as well, which adds to the cost even more. So what we're looking for is, I'd like to introduce you to this concept of what's called an MVP. You've heard of minimum viable product. What I want to talk to you about is a minimum viable policy. So for example, over here, the roundabout minimum viable policy would be always drive in the flow of the traffic and don't go against the traffic flow, and always give right of way to people on the roundabout, as an example. And then we trust people and we give them the autonomy to decide, given that they've got those simple rules, if you like, on how to apply those rules. Okay, and as you've seen, as I've demonstrated, this is far safer, faster and better as well. So we can use this as a metaphor for our organization as well. And the third idea is, we can't really give empowerment unless there is free-flowing information. We've all been in organizations where information is actually used as a weapon. I'll give this information to this person, I'll withhold it from that person. Very frustrating and anti-agile way of working. So how do we promote information democracy in your organization? Let's have a look. I've got 4 key ideas I'd like to share with you. So the first thing is, it needs to be really easy to find. It needs to be searchable, so that we can get access to the information that I need really easily. The second idea is one of information symmetry, which means everyone can see the same information. We've all got that common view of the information, so there's not differences in the way in which we view the information as well. Obviously, that's tempered with the idea of security, especially if you're in a public limited company. You want to make sure that not everybody has access to information that they should not be having access to by law. And finally is about how we deposit the information as well. So what is our policy for people to update the information and not to withhold the information, and to make sure that we've got a free-flowing environment of information that people actually proactively and promptly share with everybody. Okay, so just to recap, 3 tips for empowerment. We need to know how to fail, and we need to explain to people how to do that through the concept of the waterline. We need to have a minimum viable policy, an example of which I gave was with the roundabouts. And finally, we need to have information democracy, which allows people to have all of the information that they need at the right time, so that they can use it in the best possible way as well. So there you have it. I hope you found that useful. If you'd like further ideas, tips, please go to www.sprintzero.com, where you'll get information on this, on how to do PI planning, and so many other things as well. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you very much. Goodbye.